before we get to Paul and the wonderful story about Aura Bora, in addition to consumer VC, I'm also the community manager at Manufactured. What we do, we're an end-to-end inventory solution that helps brands with inventory financing and sourcing and production. Our goal is to help brands reduce their COGS while increasing their inventory amounts. So a couple of use cases that why brands would use Manufactured if they're looking for inventory financing, either for e-commerce or PO financing if they're in retail, and of course, increase their cash flow. Another use case is also if they're looking for ways to increase their gross margins by counter-sourcing their product without sacrificing quality. We have a manufacturer network of over 700 plus vetted vendors in all sorts of categories: food and bev, beauty, personal care, apparel, all the way to like fiber optic cables and durable products. So really are pretty all encompassing. So if you're a brand and you fall into either of these categories, I'm more than happy to chat. You can also go to our Expo Hall booth and we can chat there after this, or you can check out manufacturer.com. With all that being said, Paul, how you doing?
Hello, I'm well. Hey, Mike, good to see you.
Hey. And also on that podcast, Consumer VC, Paul actually has an episode on there, which was amazing. Paul, thanks for coming on that, and also for this as well. Paul has an awesome brand called Aura Bora, that is a sparkling water brand made with herbs, fruits, and flowers. And I like to say really treasures being weird and really out there with their flavors and their flavor profiles, and also with their marketing. That's how I think about it. Huge fan of the brand. It's delicious and is definitely very unique.
Thank you. Yes, Aura Bora is a sparkling water company. You can find our products in about 8,500 stores around the country. Sprouts, Albertson Safeway, Whole Foods, Thrive Market, the West Coast divisions of Kroger, etc.
Amazing. Wow, 8,500 now. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Let's start from the very beginning. Because what I also love about, and why I thought also Paul would be like perfect to talk at this conference, since we're talking Omnichannel, is yes, when you think beverage, like you have to think obviously retail. That's going to be where like probably the majority of your sales are going to be. But Aura Bora also does an incredible job on their D2C channel and in their marketing on the digital side of things, which I feel like when you start a beverage brand, you can be like, okay, I'm only going to be in retail. I'm only going to do that because like that's going to be the primary. But I think Aura Bora has just done an incredible job. So really excited to kind of chat with him about how he thinks about the digital side of Aura Bora and the e-commerce side, as well as retail. But first, tell us a little bit about like the origin story. Why did you and Maddie end up founding Aura Bora?
I both drank a lot of sparkling water and continue to drink a lot of sparkling water. I was working at an office building that had one of those fully stocked, beautiful kind of Silicon Valley-esque snack areas, cafeterias, etc. So we had kettle potato chips and Justin's peanut butter and Jenny's ice cream, and a number of distinctive Whole Foods-esque brands. And then we had LaCroix sparkling water. And it felt so odd to me that the most popular item by velocity was LaCroix and the least popular item by taste was LaCroix. So everyone in the office is drinking standard LaCroix sparkling water and none of us are enjoying it. And I at that time and today, I drank 10 or 11 cans of sparkling water. And it felt like, gosh, if I'm going to drink a gallon of something in a day, I might as well enjoy it. So that was the idea. And similar to a lot of those other brands I mentioned in their kind of crowded commoditized categories, we felt like there was room for a top shelf sparkling water company, i.e. differentiated flavors you can't find elsewhere, ingredients that are unusual to the category, whether new ones or excluding existing ones, and then a brand that consumers felt like really was speaking to them in a modern way. So that was the beginning of Aura Bora. That was in the summer of 2019. We launched just before Thanksgiving. And I guess it's been 4.5 years since, and we just continue to sell sparkling water. So that was the idea. My co-founder and wife, Maddie, that Mike mentioned, does all of the creative and marketing end of the company. And I do kind of everything else. So sales, finance, operations, et cetera. So we're 4.5 years in. We have a team of 15 and about 80% of our sales come from retail, but 20% come from online. And that has scaled up over the years, i.e. This year might be 85-15. Last year was 70-30. The year before that was 50-50. So D2C as a portion of revenue continues to decrease, but in both instances, they're increasing on a dollar basis.
And did you start off D2C? Thanks so much. Thanks so much for telling us in terms of like what what the market opportunity that you saw,
Sure.
you and Maddie both saw. But was D2C like your first channel that you decided to launch on when you decided like, hey, like this is like the product we want to go with?
Funny enough, no. And I had no background in e-commerce, really no background in consumer at all, but just felt to me like, okay, this is kind of the opposite of what you'd see from a D2C bro on Twitter, i.e. really low price point, really heavy. So if it's gonna be heavy, you better be selling a mattress. If it's gonna be low price point, you better be selling 100 tiny light things. And Kansas sparkling water could not be a better picture of what not to sell direct to consumer. So if you're listening to this and you have that idea, it's not a good idea. For us, what got us into direct to consumer, like a lot of brands, was frankly COVID. So I was selling in the Bay Area, going to store to store. Before we hit a distributor, selling out of my car. Then we got into a local distributor and selling with the salespeople at that local distributor here in the Bay. And then COVID hit, and I had family members, and I'm from a very large Greek family. So I had a lot of family members saying, hey, we'd love to try this new product you're selling. Why don't you ship it to us? So I made a Squarespace site, eventually became a Shopify site. And maybe once every 2 weeks, I was going to the post office, then every week, then every couple of days, then every day. So that was kind of the trajectory of the e-commerce site. And we started spending on ads maybe a year and a half after that, just before an appearance on Shark Tank. And yeah, it's kind of run amok since then. But yeah, that's the background on our D2C. So not at all what we intended. Obviously, it did end up being where the majority of people found our product for probably about a year and a half, particularly because of the Shark Tank appearance. And today, I'd say probably more people find us in retail. But the nice part is we sell distinctive products on our website, such that if you find us in retail, there are things for you to buy online and vice versa.
So first, I guess before the D2C part of it, which I definitely want to go into, when you were starting out, how were you able to even get like that chance to get into a local distributor when you and Maddie were both in San Francisco? I mean, I know that you're still in like the Bay Area, but
Yes.
what was like that process when you didn't have any kind of like traction or like things or like points to kind of go on any data from like the D2C side of things?
So I'd say at the beginning, like you mentioned, beverage and a lot of fast moving consumer goods are old school businesses, particularly, salty snacks, candy, anything in a can is an old school business. And that's kind of by design. And when I say old school, really what I mean is it's dominated by DSDs, which means a direct store delivery or a direct store distributor. So DSDs are unique from big broadline distributors. If it's in grocery, it's KeHE, UNFI, DPI. If it's in convenience, it's McLean's. If it's in food service, it's Cisco, US Foods, Shamrock, et cetera. These big conglomerate broadline distributors, they fill an entire truckload of a variety of products. They drop the pallet at the back of the store and they're on to the next stop. The DSDs have sales folks that also stock the shelves. So if you go into a typical grocery store, particularly on the outer perimeter, much of that stocking has not been done by the grocery store. It's been done by these local distributors that come with produce and dairy and often beverages like ours. So long way of saying that's why it's an old school business. Literally someone is stocking the shelves. Every Coke bottle you've ever bought from a gas station or a grocery store, probably the distributor put it on the shelf more frequently than the store. So for us, that meant, how do we convince a local DSD to take us? Like a lot of new beverages, we found a dairy distributor. We found one that was mostly cheese and eggs. It's rarely you can get onto a big beverage DSD, i.e. Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Keurig, et cetera. So you find other ways of distributors going to the same stores. And I showed up with, I think it was 45 stores that we had sold into ourselves that I was just selling out of the back of my Subaru. And that made them say yes. I think if you walk in and you've got no stores, they say, hey, why are you making us take a chance on your product? You haven't even taken a chance on your product. You haven't sold it into any stores. Whereas if you come in with, hey, these are 45 stores we've been selling to the last 5 months. I deliver to them once or twice a week. Here's exactly what they bought. Now the distributor can say, okay, there's like real margin in this for us. We're in. So that was the chain of events. That first distributor is called Rock Island. They're a pretty prominent egg distributor here in Northern California. And that led to getting the wheels turning. And now we sell to 15 distributors, including a lot of the big broadliners I referenced earlier.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense. So how then when COVID happened, and you had to, and then you had to really then think about, D2C. How did you think about like that channel overall? I know that it's, as you kind of mentioned or alluded to, it's become kind of like a breeding ground to actually produce or, new products, or there's kind of a different experience that you can have on there versus, going into a retailer, a grocery store. But how did you think about like that channel during like the times of COVID in relation to beverage?
Yeah. I'd say we probably have three distinctive D2C eras of Aura Bora. The first was very organic, like I mentioned, of, hey, folks that cannot try the product because it's not at a store near them want to try the product. They've read about it, heard about it. They're blood related to me, one of the three. Great. That was the first era. And it's just effectively fulfillment. The website had very little marketing copy on it. Here's the product, here's the price, put in your credit card. And we were lucky to break even given how expensive shipping was. Era 2 was, okay, we're still not in a ton of stores. Can we use paid advertising to gain traction, to your point, such that we can show that to retailers, knowing that, hey, we're not going to make money on the D2C side, but maybe we can pay to get folks to come to our website, buy our product, try it, like it. And then when we get to a store in their area, they're now a customer we've acquired. That was era 2. Era 3, and 1 and 2 are still true, they're just much smaller relative to 3, is great. We're now in so many stores that, frankly, for most Americans that we would want to sell to, we are in a store that they regularly shop at. Regularly, I'll call, once a quarter. Why would they buy a more expensive version of a product they can get down the street all the time? So we make a distinctive flavor. It's called our Flavor of the Month Club. And we'll do 12 flavors this year. We did 12 last year and 12 the year before. And it's a flavor that is only sold to our website. Unless it is so exorbitantly, successful and people really like it, then we'll go ahead and manufacture it for retail many months later. But it's just for our website. So if you're a sparkling water addict, aficionado, connoisseur, pick a noun of your choosing, we've got 12 new flavors for you, because obviously those of us that drink 10 to 11 cans of sparkling water a day are probably getting tired of the same flavors you get from other companies. So that was the idea. So that's the distinctive third part. And of course, we hope it has this nice loop of, hey, we have Flavor of the Month folks that then buy our product in stores, or they buy our product in stores and they think, gosh, I like this brand. I wonder if they sell more flavors. Oh, wow, they have flavors I can only buy online. So those are the three distinctive pieces. What I'll say now is D2C, and I'm putting it in quotes because there are so many ways that we advertise to consumers that then buy in store, or there's so many ways that we sell to consumers, knowing that, hey, even if it's a consumer I acquired via an ad, I know that I'm going to get more value out of them in stores. The attribution of that is, of course, inherently difficult, but we have enough data to suggest, hey, if I acquire someone for X number of dollars and they buy from me twice on my website, I have a pretty good sense they've probably bought a few cans in stores over the last year as well. So anyway, that's a lot of talk, but those are probably the three distinct.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. On the kind of first and second phase of Aura Bora, when it comes to the D2C or online channel, how did you how much did retailers kind of care when it came to actually like the data you were pulling in order to get into those stores? And did you ever was it also a process of, hey, like in this one region that we're in, that we're not currently there, but we actually maybe have a lot of people that actually buying Aura Bora, then this could become like a pretty good use case and compelling to actually try to get Aura Bora into like those retailers. Or were retailers really that like receptive when it comes to online sales as a for traction, as a measurement of traction that actually helped lift you into the source?
Yeah. So I'll say at first, not at all, to your last question of no. I remember being in particularly kind of early COVID era, the year 2020 and first half of 2021. I remember jumping on Zoom calls with retailers, and a lot of the retailers I just named are on that list, as well as some of the biggest retailers in the world. and showing them, hey, look, we've got, these thousands of people in your region of the country or in the country overall, if it's a big national retailer, buying our product. They fill out this survey for us saying they like our product more than other products that do a lot of sales in your store. No matter how I sliced the data, there were just blank stares from the category manager or supply chain person at that store. And I was always amazed, like, wow, if you're a buyer at a major store, this is your job, is to know trends and hopefully have a distinct operating advantage over your competitive retailers. And I'm showing you on our little store at aurabora.com, it's selling really well. Imagine how well it will sell in your big box store. And total blank stares. And in some instances, I can think of them saying, hey, I'm really not interested in this at all. And I would say that changed so fast. I often joke, just the average age of our buyers of our stores has probably dropped by 15 years just in the last 3 years. And I think some of that was, to my point earlier, this was a very old school industry. Most grocery is old school. And buyers kind of rose the ranks and knew kind of store operations, but didn't really know trends or how consumers were purchasing, both online and actually like macro trends. And I think that's kind of flipped, where buyers now, maybe they are not as talented at in-store operations and didn't, wear a bunch of hats, but they're younger and have a sense of, hey, the purse strings, i.e. my customers, are getting younger and younger as time goes on, and they're more digitally native. We should be buying products that sell well online and bring them into our store. So I've watched that change, where it went from, I used to put it in our sales decks, they didn't want to see it, to now sometimes it's the only thing they want to see in our sales deck. And that, our company's only 5 years old. So the fact that that's happened in 5 years is kind of remarkable.
Well, from the old school category managers, like, what were they? If it wasn't obvious online sales, was it just, was not just, but looking at sales on for stores that you were already in on the actual
Exactly.
retail wholesale side?
Yeah,
Or
it's
that
kind
was
of,
that was primarily what was
it was just a total catch-22 for a new store, for a new brand of, a little like people say, hey, if you want to be an actor, go get an agent. If you want to, have an agent, you got to go be an actor. So it's just this classic of, okay, wait, I'm asking you to be one of our first retailers. You're saying, show me sales from other stores. I don't have any other stores. You're the first store. And for some of these retailers, it's exactly the retailers you might think of as being particularly bold with emerging products. And I think, frankly, that was the other negative of COVID, beyond all the obvious ones, for consumer brands, that stores that used to be willing to take a risk and just kind of take a swing at a new product that had no retail sales before they knew that online was a great ancillary for seeing that product, COVID kind of showed them, hey, we took a risk on a lot of products and it sat on the shelves. Like, we just got to sell Purell and toilet paper and the basics. And for 2.5 years, if stores used to have 10 or 15% new SKUs of all their 4,000 SKUs in the store, that number was more like 5 to 8%. So they cut in half how many new items they were bringing in. So that was the other negative, is, hey, you can't get into big box retail because they want you to get into the emerging, i.e. Whole Foods, Sprouts of the world. But Whole Foods and Sprouts, and insert the blank, regional, often natural chains, we're looking at fewer and fewer products because there was this huge supply chain problem, and we all were, sheltering in place, buying different things at different intervals. So it did kind of stop the growth of new items for a couple of years for that reason.
Today, how do you think about the category managers and like maybe like their own incentives in from your perspective, since I know that you're obviously in 8,500 stores across the country and are in a number of different grocery stores. I know that you kind of alluded to it, natural versus conventional, for example, and like needed to kind of go through like maybe like the natural channels first and kind of and kind of have success there in order for conventional to maybe take you seriously. It seems like, as well as some of the other part of the product, maybe that's changing. But how do you think about on the pitch deck side of things, and like actually pitching to different retailers? What are maybe some of the things that you actually adjust, or just because of the macro, what you think in terms of what a category manager would like at that specific grocery store?
So some of this is not just dependent on the store, but dependent on the individual buyer, dependent on the category, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'll just speak to the category I know well, sparkling water. Obviously, it's this huge multi-billion-dollar category that has been growing by double-digit percentages, which is a lot in the grocery world. for 17 years in a row. You know, the US still drinks less sparkling water per capita than Canada and Western Europe. So I'd say it is both a big category and a fast-moving category relative to velocity in the store, and throw in that it's growing very fast. So we have kind of three tailwinds going for us, which is great. One of those headwinds, unfortunately, is because it's so big, it means there are some like very, very big competitors. You know, LaCroix, San Pellegrino, Waterloo, Polar. It's a rare category where I bet the average consumer could probably name 5 or 6 massive multi-billion-dollar companies that sell a sparkling water product: Coke, Pepsi, etc. So that's the negative, i.e., okay, how can we be different? Obviously, I think we're clearly different in our ingredient panel. Hey, we don't use citric acid. We do use herbal extracts. We're using flavors they don't see elsewhere. So for some of those buyers, and I'd say a lot of them are in the natural channel: Whole Foods, Sprouts, the fresh market, Fresh Time in the Midwest, the fresh markets in the Southeast. Those buyers wanted to see, hey, how are you different, and how are you going to bring new consumers into this category? And keep in mind that buyer, you know, all the buyers are kind of competing with one another. So when you say, hey, I'm going to bring people from a different category into your category, translation to a lot of those buyers is, I'm going to get you a larger Christmas bonus than you received previous years. And that was kind of the first step. How are we going to bring people into this category? For some retailers, it's just, hey, we're going to provide variety in a category that's kind of slowed growth. For other retailers, often big box ones, it's, hey, in this linear foot that you're giving me, I'm going to drive more dollars per week than, say, a more well-known but lower priced commodity brand ever could. So that has become probably our most common selling point is, hey, I'm roughly twice the price of LaCroix, but I think I can sell half as many units, meaning you make the same number of dollars per foot. You get to have some more variety in the set. And guess what? One of your employees gets to open up half as many boxes, so there's half as much labor. And all of that depends on the retailer you're talking to. And to your point, Mike, there are certainly trendsetters and Epicurean retailers. I say Foxtrot is a new one in the last 5 years that's done an amazing job finding new items solely based on them being new and innovative and having great macro ingredients, not having to do with previous sales. Whole Foods, unfortunately, has taken a little bit of a backseat on finding new products, which is fine. That's probably post-Amazon acquisition. All of us kind of knew that had to happen. They scrapped a lot of their forager program, and they buy as a big national chain now rather than individual regions. Sprouts has taken up a lot of that with their great forager program. If you go into a Sprouts, you'll see a few pallets that change every, I think it's every 60 days, bringing you new items that might be in and out or might be there to stay. Those are great retailers to start with. And the sales cycle changes all the way up into the Targets and Walmarts of the world, where eventually you hope your sales conversation becomes, hey, we've sold really well the last 5 years. How can we eke out another 5 to 10% of contribution margin for you, the category manager? I'm going to make sure that we come out with that particular innovative product. We're going to give you an exclusive on it. We'll send merchandisers in to that particular part of the set. So all of those are items that can happen depending on the category manager.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And also thinking about as well as kind of incentivize them too with how can we get 10% contribution margin if we obviously sell a lot of sparkling water and everything. How also do you think about when you do enter like a new store? And I imagine this is obviously part of the conversation, but what's in your opinion like your playbook in terms of like number of SKUs to actually launch with in the store as like a test? Is it starting off with the one hero product, and you can tell me like what is your like highest selling product? But or is it with 4 different SKUs? How do you think overall about like SKU assortment?
So again, I'll continue to say this probably till I die, but I just knew nothing about this industry. So I made every mistake in the first couple of years. Probably the first mistake I make was launching with too many SKUs. And the second mistake was launching with SKUs that I had no business launching with. So I'll obviously, if you're a sparkling water drinker, you know that lemon, lime, grapefruit, those are the 3 most popular sparkling water flavors, regardless of the brand. LaCroix, Polar, Waterloo, etc. For us, I had this big sell sheet at the beginning that said no boring citrus flavors. That was kind of in big font. And that means we launched with the following 5 SKUs, which you'll probably think there's no way you could build a business off those 5 SKUs. And if you think that, you're totally right. Lemongrass coconut, peppermint watermelon, lavender cucumber, strawberry basil, and cactus rose. Those were our first 5 SKUs we launched at retail. If you talk to the average American, hey, what do you think cactus rose will taste like? No idea. What will lemongrass coconut taste like? Lemongrass might taste like lemon, and I know what coconut is, but I'm not really sure. And we kind of launched with 5 SKUs, and 3 of them you could distinctly say, I don't know what this should taste like, which is not a good thing in a food and beverage product. Even just looking at packaging of food and beverage, I mean, it's done as if all of the world are 5-year-olds that don't have a good reading comprehension. It's in big, bold fonts and pictures of, the ingredients and products, et cetera. So for us, we launched with those 5 SKUs. I wish I had launched with different SKUs, and I wish I'd probably launched with 3. I think some people can get away with 4, but I think 3 is the perfect number in that it really makes operations easy. You can normally get a retailer to say yes to all 3 SKUs. And what we had happen is we had 5 SKUs, and most retailers said, yes, send us your 3 best. Well, for the first year and a half, 3 best meant I'm going to send you the 3 I have the most inventory of, because I actually don't know yet which one's the best. So, whatever, you can do the law of combinatorics to see how many different stores. Some of them had lavender, cactus, and basil. Some of them had lavender, lemongrass, and peppermint. Some of them had peppermint, lemongrass, and basil, et cetera, until we figured out, okay, these ones sell the best. But it was not a good way of doing this. I'd recommend most people launch with 3, and ideally you have a really good sense of which of those is going to be the best. And in other categories, it's more obvious. Chocolate will always be the best ice cream flavor, regardless of the company. And okay, that's going to be our hero SKU. Chocolate chip, same thing. If you have a yogurt, vanilla is going to be the best, et cetera. So for sparkling water, I wasn't really sure because I purposefully didn't make the SKUs that other brands were making. Now, obviously, just to show how foolish I was, yes, now our best-selling flavors are our version of lemon is a ginger Meyer lemon. We have a version of lime, it's lime cardamom. We have a version of grapefruit elderflower. So eventually we did make the boring citrus flavors, but hopefully in a distinctly Aura Bora way.
So those 3 end up becoming your bestsellers.
They have not yet all overtaken. Lavender is still our bestseller.
Lavender is still the bestseller. Okay.
Yeah. And I think to my point earlier, it was the one we launched with at the beginning, and everyone knows what lavender and cucumber water tastes like. So it was kind of clear as to why it would be the bestseller. But my guess is give us a year and the citrus SKUs will probably outperform the non-citrus SKUs.
Got it. That's so interesting. And well, speaking of new SKUs and testing, obviously, you kind of use the D2C channel it seems like as kind of like a testing ground with the flavor of the month, and people can subscribe and kind of try out for those that really want to get deep into Aura Bora and all the obviously new flavors that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about, obviously, I would imagine from an operations and inventory, I love how I say obviously, maybe it's not obvious. But from I would imagine from an inventory planning perspective, maybe you have a certain number of subscribers or you kind of roughly know how many you actually need to produce. But what gets kind of, how do you think about promotion from promoting that test of a monthly flavor into actually becoming a full-time flavor that actually then goes out into kind of your retail stores?
So it is really, it's really helpful to be in a category that has addicts, aficionados, connoisseurs. Again, pick a word you're choosing. What's great about it is they're just very, very opinionated. So for us, the pipeline between selling something online, I'll say all the SKUs I just referenced, the citrus ones, were all limited time only SKUs to our website. And we watched the repeat purchase rate of those SKUs versus our regular SKUs. And we saw, okay, not only are a lot of people buying ginger Meyer lemon right away once we announce it to our social media, to our email list, et cetera, they're then coming back 2, 3, 4 times over the course, in as many months. All right, this must be people's favorite SKU. And then it's not that, people always say, hey, if you run a good e-commerce business, yes, you should have, thousands or tens of thousands of customers. Absolutely. The truth is, I often find there's like, in every e-commerce business I've ever seen, a really, really strong cohort of customers that buy almost everything you've made at least once. So for us, it's not more than 1,000, maybe 1,500 people. You can call 1,500 people. Like the average account executive at a software company calls 1,500 people in a week. So if you want to figure out which SKUs are your core basis favorite SKUs, and you feel like your website is an accurate, or your e-commerce is an accurate depiction of your core consumer that you hope will be in retail, smile and dial. So for us, I think kind of soon after we sold the lime cardamom SKU, I did another round of those phone calls, and there are people on that list of 1,500 who I trust more than others, frankly, and very quickly became clear, okay, this is where people want this to go. So anyway, operationally, to your actual point, we make 4,000 to 6,000 cases of the limited time flavor. We sell it online to this group of people over the course of 30 to 60 days. Those that buy a ton of it in repeat purchase rate, we then hope to get a retailer to hook into it with an exclusive. Like our grapefruit elderflower was only sold at Sprouts for about 6 months. We have a raspberry vanilla flavor that will only be sold at Kroger banners for about 6 months. And it's an amazing way to, okay, great, we can hit the minimum at our manufacturing facility, and we can do this test to retail, but not have it go wild and out of control. We can see, hey, how do Kroger shoppers like raspberry vanilla before we try to sell it to Albertsons, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Target, et cetera.
That's so clever, and that's maybe part of how you hook a retailer as well. Like, come in as an exclusive
Yeah.
for this like specific flavor. Here's kind of the sales data, and really kind of focusing on, it seems like, the actual repeat purchase rate for it. If people are kind of the same kind of lovers of Aura Bora, kind of buying it over and over and over again, and making sure like that's actually happening, where it actually might be promoted
Exactly.
to exclusive. Very, very cool. How and I think that answers your question, Maureen. Sorry, you actually said your question this question way better than I did. How do you determine market adoption of newer versions of your products? I think that that kind of answers that. Wanted to talk a little bit as well about like Instacart and that channel, because Instacart seems like a pretty fascinating channel in some ways, because the sale actually happens like in retail grocery, but of course, like from a marketing perspective, or where the buyer actually is, it's of course like a digital transaction purchase. How do you think overall about Instacart, and has Instacart been like a pretty a good channel for you, or not really?
Instacart's been great. I'll start with that. To my point earlier about just the buyers of big categories at mainstream retailers
Yeah.
across the country have skewed younger and younger. I would say one thing we've seen, particularly in consumer packaged goods, particularly of emerging brands that maybe had a disproportionate D2C presence in the first couple of years, particularly if it was during COVID, is we are seeing more and more e-commerce managers or directors of growth or directors of marketing come from the e-commerce side and move over to the retail side. So that is a macro trend we're seeing. It's also been true of Aura Bora's team. We have an amazing gentleman named Cameron, who's our head of growth. And he actually has a kind of a perfect resume for us, in that he spent about a decade selling consumer products in stores, a lot of them beverages. And then he had spent another decade selling consumer products online. And now he is really good at what I'll call this gray area between retail and e-com. And Instacart's a perfect example of that. For years, folks have known about Ibotta and I'd say store-owned shopper marketing. So Kroger and Albertsons have their own in-house shopper marketing platform that brands push ads to consumers. And if you're a frequent shopper of any of those grocery store chains, you probably have their app. You probably know, hey, when does Nabisco go on sale? Or when does Frito-Lay go on sale? When does Pepsi go on sale? And oftentimes the big conglomerates will separate their promos based on the product. So that was shopper marketing 1.0 of the post-internet era. I'd say 2.0 is these brands that have a really distinctive online presence, probably both on Amazon and on their own Shopify store. As they get into more and more retailers, hey, we want to take our group of hundreds of thousands of customers that we email every month, and we want to send them into Publix, send them into Sprouts, send them into Wegmans, and we can show the category manager, hey, we've got some weight behind this, and you're going to have the best price on shelf, or you're going to have a distinctive product they can't get elsewhere. And for much larger companies or more complicated portfolio companies than Aura Bora, sometimes they have 5 kinds of products across 3 different categories, and only 2 of them are on their website. And for that third category, you have to go into a store to buy it. So I'll say for us, Instacart is an amazing gray area in that, of course, folks are getting an ad on their phone or on their laptop while they're doing their grocery shopping for the week. That seems like e-commerce, but the ad does not lead to our website. It leads to a retailer that they were already shopping at. Hey, you're buying sparkling water at Sprouts anyway. Why don't you buy this sparkling water? You're buying sparkling water at Kroger anyway. Why do you buy this sparkling water? And why I really like Instacart, and I think a lot of other emerging brand operators do, is it doesn't train the consumer to buy on promo. Obviously, traditional grocery store promotions are, hey, for 12, 16, 20 weeks a year, we're going to mark down the price in a TPR, a temporary price reduction, and we're going to get people hooked on buying this product on sale, and then they're going to buy it full price. For some consumers, they buy it on sale, then they come back and buy it full price. For a lot of consumers, they buy it on sale, and they don't buy it until it's back on sale. Instacart's great because we can introduce folks to this product. It's off of search terms. So if you're already looking for sparkling water or you're looking for a lavender flavored drink, you're going to find our lavender cucumber flavor, and you're buying it full price. Yes, we're not getting full margin because of course we're buying the ad on Instacart, but I think it's an amazing way of holding your brand equity. And frankly, we've just gotten a really good return on those consumers. The consumers that are buying on Instacart are probably newer, often millennial consumers that would like a distinctly flavored sparkling water. So we like Instacart, but we've spent a lot of time learning this gray shopper marketing kind of e-com, kind of retail world.
Yeah, and I'd imagine where you actually kind of allocate when it comes to like marketing spend too, or what Instacart is, that's also like pretty difficult because obviously you're not leading things to D2C, but you're obviously leading them to actually purchase in the grocery store. I'd imagine though, I think to your point as well, since maybe like the ideal shopper that would be interested in an Aura Bora skews younger, maybe more millennial, and that's typically going to be more people on using maybe Instacart that actually use the app, and so then actually like more of your sales might actually come through that channel than maybe like other products, for example.
For sure, yeah, we've certainly found that. Particularly of our multi-pack product. We sell single-serve cans for $1.99 a can, and then we sell a 6-pack of our product generally for $9.99 off promo, $8.99 on promo. And for those multi-packs, yeah, we found Instacart a particularly great place to advertise for sure.
This is a peculiar question, but do Instacart, I imagine, is a very, very small percentage of retailers of a retailer's, for example, sales, but is that at all like a to actually go into retailer? Is that all ever like part of the sales pitch of that? Hey, like if you're looking for also like younger 100%. Brands
Yeah.
to actually to actually be on Instacart, then actually we might be a good option for you.
What's amazing about any 3-sided marketplace, and Instacart is a 3-sided marketplace in that, right. Of course, they're connecting brands to retailers to consumers. And what's amazing about Instacart is they're making money on all 3 sides. It's like the greatest business ever. And they just went public last year. If you want to read more about the behind the scenes, all of this is public data. You can see how much revenue do they make from consumers, how much revenue they make from retailers, how much revenue do they make from brands. And I feel particularly sure that it will continue to increase market share. Yes, post-COVID, a lot of people stopped buying from Instacart and other online grocers to go back into stores, of course, but there will just be more and more adoption over time. Why I really like it, just as a brand, separate from what we've talked about so far, is a lot of this is data that you can't really get, i.e., we get data from Spins or IRI or Nielsen showing us, hey, when we run a promo, what % bump do we get on that promo? Or how are we selling compared to our competitors? Those are all great data pieces. But we don't really know, how do we sell to guys named Mike in Los Angeles? And that's data I just don't have. And maybe the best version of this is when vitamin water sold, they sold for a frankly way too high a multiple. I think vitamin water sold for $3 or $4 billion. Vitamin water today is probably worth $600 or $700 million. So they've never gotten to be as big as they were the day they sold. I bet the day before they sold, the day after they sold were both declines off of the apex. So they could not have sold at a better time. The data that we didn't have was how many people were buying vitamin water once versus 100 times. And when you get store depletion data, hey, we sold 100 cans at this store last week. Was that one person buying 100 cans or 100 people buying one can? That data has been totally protected if it exists at all in a number of retailers. Instacart has that data, even for some of the old school retailers, and they have it tied to your email address, tied to your real address, tied to your phone number, your name, your age, et cetera. So the data set that they're building will ultimately become, I think, the biggest piece of their business and will be particularly valuable to consumer brands, not just small ones like ours, but to Nestle, Coke, Pepsi, Heinz, et cetera.
Yeah, no, totally. And do you get access to that data set or no?
They are increasingly, well, you can read this online. Instacart, when they went public, I think that was kind of one of the roadshow questions they got from folks was, hey, you're a retail company looking for a technology valuation. Sure, there's an app, but I mean, don't you just deliver groceries? And I think that was kind of their hook, line, and sinker is, well, actually, we're gathering a lot of data about the US and soon worldwide consumers. And keep in mind, the vast majority of consumer dollars in the world are spent at grocery stores. So this is a particularly valuable data set. No, we don't get access to all of it right now. The little that we have given access to, I'm kind of blown away by. And I can only imagine the 90% we've yet to see.
It's incredible. That's incredible. And that's a great way to kind of break it down in terms of that you do not know what the repeat purchase rate is at grocery stores, and kind of Instacart actually be able to actually provide that to brands. That's incredibly powerful because you're almost operating it like that's like, the power of D2C, or like what like the ethos was from the beginning, right? That you actually have this incredible amount of data. So you're actually taking that, you're actually using that for grocery. Maybe it's a fraction of grocery, but still like, Instacart is obviously a multi-billion-dollar company. So that's great. That's great. Derek, how we doing?
Doing good. I did not want to stop that riff. That was amazing. And I think you're absolutely right in the sense that if we can get the same data at a retail level that you can get on your owned D2C channel, you're going to be able to make better decisions, scale out, and launch more channels, probably launch more SKUs, and ultimately increase operational efficiency, all the good things that we want. It makes me excited to think, this is data that the big guys held onto very tightly at the top, and it's becoming democratized. And I just wonder how many other types of data, even outside of e-commerce, will become democratized more and more. Our health data, other things that will really help move all industry along. So, you got me thinking very esoterically there.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I'm even thinking about like buy now pay later data. Sorry, not buy now pay later. Buy now like pick up in store, for example. Like I went to Target yesterday, and obviously I purchased online and then picked up the products in store that are coming from the actual store itself. They're not being shipped to the store, so it's not part of like Target e-com, like that data, or and like other kind of data sources too. So that's really, really interesting.
It is, it can be scary, of course, like headlines about how our data is being abused. And maybe that's true, but the alternative to Derek's point is, hey, the big brands and the big retailers have had access to this for a long time. And the fact that there's the possibility that brands can become a reflection of what we want to see in the world. Anyone that shops frequently knows that what's on the shelf is not actually an accurate reflection of what consumers want. That's just full stop. Definitely not true. It's a reflection of what the big brands want to put in a trough for us to eat or drink. Coke, Pepsi, Heinz, General Mills, Kraft, et cetera. I hope because of this data, in a world 50 years from now, stores will be more so a reflection of what we actually want to consume and not just their ownership of that real estate in the stores.
I love it, Paul.
I mean, sticking with like Instacart, do you find that you have, I know it's digital shelf space versus, real shelf space, but do you find that you're actually having more per se, like digital health space as someone, is searching for sparkling water? Obviously, I know it probably depends on the grocery store, but versus the actual amount of shelf space you actually have in the store?
Yeah, so I'll give you a specific example. Publix is one of our best retailers. If you're listening to this and you're in the Southeast, you're probably a huge Publix super fan. You probably get pub subs, and I don't really get it, but I'm thrilled that you guys love it. It's a massive, massive aisle. Like Publix is a conventional grocery store that kind of operates like a natural grocery store because people are such ardent fans and because they dominate the region. I mean, Whole Foods' worst region is in the Southeast because Publix is so dominant.
Interesting.
That aisle, my guess is there are actually not guess, there are 32 sparkling water brands in Publix. We're one of those 32. I bet in that aisle of sparkling water, we take up no more than 3.5 or 4% of the total linear inches on the shelf. I bet on Publix, if you put in sparkling water, Aura Bora probably takes up 20%. So all of a sudden we can 5x our shelf space. Of course, we're buying it via ad spend, but we know that we're going to get a disproportionately happy customer on Instacart than we would other places. So anyway, that's one small example, but yes, we can certainly increase our shelf space online.
That's awesome. Very interesting. We have to move into our next session, but I wanted to congratulate Maureen on asking a great question. And by the way, this website is amazing. The brand just stands out. It's pungent. Incredible. I can taste it, which I think was the goal, Paul. So great job on the brand. We're going to buy a flavor of the month box for Maureen and send it out to her. So Maureen, thank you for such a great question. So gentlemen, with that, thank you both so much. Great session. And I love that we got to touch on Instacart, which is, oh man, this seems like another blue ocean channel that not a lot of people are talking about. So I'm glad we got that in the discussion.
Cool.
Awesome.
Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you, Paul. Thanks so much. Thanks, Derek.
Bye, everyone.